Everybody, welcome to our webinar together with Anth and Martin, who will quickly do as well introductions of themselves. Today we'll be exploring the role of technology in financial operations. And on this note, I'll hand it over to Anth and Martin to introduce, and I'll briefly introduce myself afterwards.
Hi, my name is Martin Markovits. I'm a founder and director of Axiom Advisory, where we provide bookkeeping services with a financial advisory component. We also provide various add-on services such as annual accounts, payroll, and VAT return filings. And we've had experience using Kolleno to assist our clients with their debt. Thank you.
So hello, thank you so much, Irina. My name's Anthaeus Weir, and I'm a marketing leader here at Intuit, specifically focusing on QuickBooks. So I'm really excited to talk to you about the accounting industry and some of the great work that we're doing together and some of that thought leadership piece. So thank you once again for inviting me today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Irina, and I'm looking after partnerships here at Kolleno. And really looking forward to this discussion with Martin and Anth. So as we move into, I guess, the questions for the audience, it'll be great to just kind of lay maybe some definitions, right? We all talk about automation, we all talk about efficient financial operations, but how do you define efficient financial operations? I don't know, Martin, Anth, do you want to start?
Efficient financial operations, good question. Well, from an accounting / bookkeeping perspective, efficient financial operations would mean that a client has data available to them on a regular basis. So it could be, it just depends on each client, but it could be weekly or monthly or quarterly. It just depends on each business. So it's available to them when they need it, essentially, at the correct intervals. And in order to do that, there needs to be an efficient process in the background. So as a firm, we only use QuickBooks because we believe that in order to do a job well, you should specialize in one particular product. So we're not like those bookkeepers who, will do QuickBooks Zero, and Sage and many others. We don't do that. We focus on one, and we want to know it well. And then and the advantage over there is that once we know a software well, we can also try and focus on which other external third-party software would work very well with QuickBooks, and Kolleno is a very good example of that. So in essence, a smooth or efficient financial operations involve the goal, i.e., what does the client need? The client needs their reports and their data in a timely manner, and underpinning that, you need to have an excellent system in the background that's working well. So that's my response to that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I think, you pretty much covered a lot of those key concepts that we see and what we advise customers, accountants, sole traders, whatever you sort of sit into, the same sort of thing. I think to sort of summarize in a nutshell from our perspective, and that's pretty much embedded throughout the offerings that we have with QuickBooks, is around, enabling a streamlined sort of operation. And for that basically means that we, having access to that data, as you mentioned, sort of like in real time and a full overview, right? When you think about the different cogs that kind of go into financial operations, when people sort of think of that, they think of sort of like one element, and there's so many different elements that go into the accounting side. And I think, as you mentioned, the power of the data is what really brings that to life, as well as automating some of those tedious, as we like to say, processes as well, because there's a lot of, especially within the accounting space, there's a lot of sort of accounting that can actually is pretty much manual, but actually can be automated, and that's something that we've really sort of focused on. And when we speak to accountants, similarly like yourself, and we say, what sort of the key components to you defining what is sort of an efficient way of doing the accounting, is definitely around that real-time visibility of your data, automating some of those tasks, and really making the whole process as seamless and as easy as possible. Because what we don't really want small businesses or businesses to actually think about is actually the financial side of operating their business. That we want them to be able to succeed in what they're doing, and then covering those sort of pain points enables them to actually focus on their business and not actually the accounting side. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's interesting point of views. I think what I sometimes come across, especially some of our clients, when you ask them, they think they have the most efficient financial operations in the world, and you start digging in, and you realize that a lot of their applications are quite siloed. So they may have all the data on their, say, I don't know, payables, then on their receivables, and sometimes they don't have a clear picture. And even though they would be utilizing an ERP system, so like QuickBooks, they may not necessarily look at the right data even there. So I think the emphasis on the right data and connected data is probably how I would define efficient financial operations. And when that data that you need to get doesn't take you 5 hours or 6 hours to get what you need, I think in the current day and age, you should be able to get data at the tip of your fingers, right? Any reports, any sort of financial health reports should be technically available to you readily, right? So I think that's how I would define the efficient financial process. Can you access your data? Can you know what's happening in your company within minutes rather than hours? Maybe answer this one to you. So within the context of how does cloud-based accounting enhance financial operations?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think, as we've sort of the same themes that we're saying, real time access to data that's really actionable, and enabling you to automate your process. When we kind of think of that as the context there, one of the main things is being able to access that data all the time. And within a SaaS-based platform, and it being in the cloud, depending on the terminology you want to use, actually we're enabling businesses to be able to access that and not have to worry about, the data security, worrying about maintaining the solution. Mainly, all of that stuff is now just managed by us. Historically in organizations I've worked before, when we look at like an on-prem solution, it has been that. And then when you've got to then do an update, it's like, okay, great, this is actually going to disrupt our business operations. Whereas actually that's now being mitigated. I think also with the capabilities that we have is that you can access that on the move. So when we think about some of our customers, for example, which is relevant to everybody on this call, invoices, historically, if you're not able to access that platform via the cloud, when you want to then issue an invoice, that would be something that you would have to take away. You would have to get all the, the relevant inputs that need to go into that invoice, rather than actually being able to sit down with your customers or their vendors or whoever that would be to actually invoice them there and in real time. And if we start to think just moving outside of the accounting context, imagine how that actually impacts the customer experience, right? Because you're not able to deliver everything all in one go. So being able to access that platform, online, alongside all the other points that we sort of talked about, I think is really, really key and critical, which is why a lot of technology, including accounting now, is moving to the cloud, because there's so many different benefits that are available on demand.
Yeah. And maybe Martin, from your perspective, so as a founder of a bookkeeping specialist, how do you leverage technology to optimize operations within your company and maybe your clients?
So, well, ultimately, our entire focus when it comes to bookkeeping work is to reduce the manual work, is to take away the manual elements and the labor-intensive elements to try and make it as efficient and as quick as possible. So we like to focus on technology, and we by researching, what could be used for what. So as a starting point, we obviously use for the general bookkeeping, we'll use an online software, QuickBooks Online, as I said before. That's firstly. And then depending on what the clients need, which is sometimes it's industry dependent, sometimes it's just dependent on the size of the business. If they're massive and they've got huge volumes of transactions, we may use additional software to help with delivering what they've asked from us. So I can give you some examples. So If we have e-commerce businesses, we may use a software that will help pull information from an online platform such as Amazon to QuickBooks Online. The reason, and because there's a huge range of e-commerce software, the one we'll pick will depend on what the client's trying to gain from their bookkeeping. What kind of data they want. So if they want to see how many units they sell, we'll need to use a different software to someone who merely just wants to know their numbers and the bottom line. So that's just one example. Another one could be Kolleno, easily. If a client wants to manage their debt as well, then we would connect Kolleno and work with them to help bring their debt down, or to help them understand their customer behaviors and stuff like that. So we look at technology as much as possible in order to sort of broaden the scope of what we can do in the most efficient way possible.
And then maybe from my side, if I had to look at what does automation financial operations mean and how important it is in today's businesses landscape, I think for me, I look across different client bases, right? And we're talking about the small, medium businesses to enterprise. And I always feel like the enterprise level clients are very less likely to actually do a lot of new technology adoption. And if they do adopt, it kind of just sticks in the tech stack. Whereas the small, medium and businesses, they're more adaptable to new technology, and they actually try to utilize as many as possible of different applications. So for example, I don't know, I've seen in the expense management, you've got the likes of Spend, there's Payhawk, Plios, right? And then on the account receivables, you got someone like ourselves, Kolleno. And on top of that, you also got everything to help you with the payroll, which I believe also QuickBooks has as basically an application within. And there's just so many other tools that you can be using to automate your financial operations. And I feel like having the right ERP system in place, like QuickBooks, that has, like, I think, Alf, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but more than 700 plus integrations with the other parties, that you can just almost like supercharge your operations, like with everything that's available in the market.
Absolutely.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think that's a really good point. Just on the integration side of things, I think that is probably what makes QuickBooks stand out when you think of some of the other solutions out there. Is, as you mentioned before, one thing that we're really good at doing is identifying, what are the actual external applications that our customers use, right? So there's various different brands on there, spanning across various different industries. If you're an e-commerce, if predominantly you use e-commerce, then obviously you might use, for example, Shopify, or you might use Etsy and things like that. So we've got tight integrations there, all the way to other different types of solutions. And I think, as you mentioned, historically, when you think around desktop or on-prem solutions, you wouldn't have that capability, or certainly you would have to get somebody in to one, implement that, but then also there's a cost of managing that. So yeah, that's a very, very good point when it comes to the integration side with the SaaS, because once again, going back to the original point that I made, is that we manage that. So you don't need to worry about the security updates or anything like that. You just literally, in a click of a button, have that integration ready and set up.
I think if we move on to a slightly, I guess, different set of questions and more on the practical applications of the automation tools, because Martin, as you mentioned, there's a lot of tedious tasks in accounting that you need to automate, or one needs to automate. And I think it's kind of ties on to the previous question, but how has the increased accessibility of automation tools impacted its implementation, and what does it look like practically?
Yeah, so it is dependent on the software. Yeah, there is a huge amount, and some of them are really good and some of them are not. So these things usually come with experience. So obviously someone who's starting out and opening a new firm will struggle, to identify what's a good piece of software, what isn't. But personally, I'm part of, big part of big groups of bookkeepers and accountants, and whenever we need to know, whenever we need to know about a particular software, if we're looking for a solution to a particular problem and we're asking about software for it, lots of people will give their advice and opinion on what they've used, and that will help narrow it down. Okay, and so that will help narrow it down. So that's in terms of finding the right software. In terms of once you've found it and you want to implement it, so most softwares that integrate with QuickBooks, from my experience, are quite intuitive and they're very easy to work with. And most of them will also have support systems where you could have a meeting with someone for onboarding. And once you have one or two meetings with them, you pick it up very, very quickly. I've yet to find a software that was very difficult to work with and was unimplementable. So that's been my experience on this matter. Usually they're quite plug-in. They plug in and they work, and you just need to figure it out, and it doesn't take long. Once you work with the onboarding team, you eventually you just work it out, and it's all good.
Thank you.
Sorry, just to add on to that. So I agree. I think from our perspective of how we see, because I think what you were basically asking, Irina, is effectively how critical is automation within the financial operation of a business. Is that correct? Have I understood the question correctly? Yeah, so I think when we think about it from certainly from a QuickBooks perspective, we sort of see it, and I sort of see it in three sort of key areas, not to bore everybody. The first one simply is just to boost operational efficiency. And it goes back to the previous comment that I sort of said before, is that as an Intuit brand, our sort of company mission is powering prosperity around the world for our customers. So when we actually break that down, because within that context, it sounds great, but what does that actually mean? Is every single design decision that we do within the product needs to align back to that prosperity part. And if we think about, boosting operational efficiencies, that comes with so many different benefits, right? You can reduce your cost, because it means that you're actually optimizing a process that probably would have cost you X and is now being reduced to Y. Probably got that the wrong way around, but you know what I mean. And then the second one is around time as well, is that if you think about, again, if you're optimizing a process, then naturally you're obviously doing that to save time. I don't think there's anybody on this planet that optimizes to increase the time that it takes for something to work. It doesn't make sense. So I think, that's the pillar one for us, which is, boosting that operational efficiency. And you get that through the automation, and some of the tools and some of the things that's coming in the roadmap is really, really cool, where actually we enable our customers to be able to do that with AI sort of giving them those recommendations. And again, when you think about it from an accountant, the accountants that we work with, they're able to then advise, alluding to some of the stuff that Martin had said, where's the best places for you to be able to optimize that process. The second thing, obviously, naturally, is reducing human error. And I think, if you gave me responsibility of managing your company when it comes to your accounting without using, a financial operation, you're definitely going into administration very quickly. So I think when you think about a tool that allows you to reduce that human error, especially when you're talking about finances, right? Because as we all know, certainly in the UK, when it comes to self-assessment, when it comes to that sort of financial regulatory requirements that you need to do, you need to make sure that your books are in order, because you can't use the excuse of, I don't have a tool that manages that for me. That's not going to go down well. So again, we really, really have built the tool to ensure that you are able to reduce that human error. And again, going back to that, laddering back up to that power and prosperity, rather than you having to identify those processes, the tool's able to sort of intuitively, alluding to what Martin had said previously, to give you that insight. And then the third thing, which is again, pretty much the same as the one before, but is something that we use as a separate pillar, is consistent accounting practices. And again, that's really, really relevant, because when you are having to, think about a business that has to get externally audited, if you've got one team doing one accounting practice and another one doing something else, actually that's going to cause a lot of problems for you, because, it could be seen, are you actually trying to hide something here? Why are you not having a consistent accounting practice? And it also enables you to be able to forecast correctly as well. So I think that's where, when we think about how critical it is to automate, this is what automation is able to bring in, because you can automate those three pillars that I just discussed.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, and it's about, I think, for me, when I think about the automation, especially in financial operations, one is the data, but also reducing the human error, because with the amount of tedious tasks that you need to do, so I know I probably will speak a little bit about Kolleno, but let's say if you need to send out invoices to chase or to follow up with people every, I don't know, 5 days, most likely you are going to make a mistake by putting the wrong number here or there. If you're able to just press the button, let it go, specify any conditions that you need, and just let it run, right? So, like, for example, we've just recently released something called workflows, and those are able to filter for any specific filter you have on your customers or even invoice level that can trigger that workflow. And to me, that almost taken away that even logic or thinking that you need to do as a human being to say, well, at this point, if this invoice in dispute, I need to send this message. That takes away even that thinking from you. And I think that's level of what today's financial operations efficiency should be about. It's taken away the human error as much as possible, probably would be my opinion. I think from two of us, Martin, you're probably the one who uses those tools mostly during your day to day. So I think the question to you is, in your daily operations, how have automation tools translated into tangible benefits? And do you track their impact at all?
Yeah, so I mean, from a internally from our perspective, in terms of our workload, absolutely, it reduces our workload massively. I mean, we would have I mean, let's just use e-commerce as an example. E-commerce would require lots of manual entry without integration software. It's just, that there are so many different types of transactions on an Amazon account. And that's if you're just using Amazon. What's if you're using eBay, Shopify, and WooCommerce? They all have different types of transactions that need to be categorized differently. With integration software, you can set it up so that each category is sort of predefined and then just automatically goes in the whole time. That's one example. Another example would be if we have clients who have a portfolio of companies with us, and they may want to see how they're doing across the board, not just on each individual company. We could get a report from QuickBooks for each individual company. So we may use a software such as Sift to sort of connect all the companies and provide a report across the board so that our clients can see immediately across their portfolio how it's doing, and in one place without having to have multiple reports. So it's very beneficial to us in that we can provide we can take on more with less staff, for example, than would otherwise be the case. We could sometimes charge better than our competitors because we can do things more quickly and more efficiently, and therefore win over business that way. It also helps our clients because clients love the fact that they're able to look at reports on a platform like Sift. It's a feature that is not common. Another example is we could also expand what we do. Kolleno is actually a very good example for this. So with Kolleno, once Kolleno came to market and we discovered it, we were now able to provide a service where we can manage a client's debts. We could say, look, you've got all this debt. You're struggling to keep on top of it for a certain amount of money, for a certain fee. We'll manage it for you if you use this software. And because Kolleno does the bulk of the heavy lifting, we're able to provide that service and become more valuable to our clients, as well as increasing revenue. So yeah, automation is really good for us. It's in many ways, and for our clients. In terms of tracking the impact, we don't track the impact. So I'll just be straightforward with that.
You have high revenue. That's all that matters.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you, Martin. Well, I think we're moving on into kind of another part of strategies and what strategies clients should be using for remaining lean in operations. And I think it's almost coming back to the point you were just making now, right? It's that you can do more with less. What strategies would you recommend for businesses to remain lean and efficient in their financial operations?
Well, we have a general we have a general sort of standard way of working with clients to make sure that their operations are efficient and lean, as you call them, and that involves the principle is being organized. That's the principle, is being organized. In practice, it involves a few components. So number one is having a defined accountancy department, even if you're just a one-man business. So even if you're just a one-man business, having an email address, account at ABC Limited, creates a financial department. There's now an email address where everything finance related goes to. So your invoices from your suppliers will go there. Any remittances or invoices that you send will leave from there, and that helps the finance function have foundations. It's organized. It's everything's in one place. If you need to know something, then that's where you'll go. So that's the key, and that's what when we onboard businesses who who are not doing any bookkeeping, or they are, but it's all a mess. It's usually the case that they don't have an accounts department. They have 3 people working in the business, and whoever does a job gets the invoice, or whoever speaks to a supplier will get the supplier invoice, and it's a big mess. So that's kind of the first point, which is you have to be organized and you have to create a finance department, such as an email address. That's firstly. Secondly, is to use software to manage and record the transactions, and we use QuickBooks Online for that. And the way that helps is that keeps all the financial data in one place. So yes, it might so financial data comes in through emails, fair enough, but it also comes in through the bank, through credit card portals, through online platforms like Amazon, depending on the business. So they need to be put all into one place. So software, again, the key here is it's organized and it's controlled. It's in one place, in one software. So that's kind of how that's kind of the starting point. Then once that's in place, we then look at the wider picture. So what else do they have? Oh, they may have debt. So Kolleno might become an option. Oh, they have various companies. Okay, do we need something like SIFT to manage that? Oh, they have assets. Do we need something to manage their asset register? So that's when we start looking at the wider picture and we start, consolidating and organizing more. The key point here is being organized, and how you organize just depends on the business and its needs. And that way you keep things smooth and efficient and lean and the costs down. That's how we work. That's the sort of the ethos or the principle.
Thank you. And anything to add?
No, not really. I think that's pretty much the way that we see that as well, is around, making sure that first, whenever we're doing an implementation, again, our implementations are through our accountants, right? Because the whole purpose of having QuickBooks is that you don't need an implementation. Normally you would have an accountant that would recommend QuickBooks because that's what they use as their standard practice. So for us, when it comes to the implementation side, we would give advice, and the advice would be pretty much what Martin said, right? Making sure you've got those principles set up, and really defining on the onset, like, what does good look like for you, and where are your pain points, and how can we then tailor our rolling out this solution, because we have a great customer success team that would actually sit down. I suppose you could call them implementation support on how you want to look at it, but their role is to actually ensure that, again, you're successful with your journey with QuickBooks. And they would pretty much cover what Martin said. So I think he's done a really good job of summarizing that.
Thank you.
I think very little I'll add from my side, and what I've seen is I think once the business gets the point of, like, they've got the email, they've got the ERP, I think the one probably important part to remain lean and efficient is also getting the right payment tools in place. So if you are a B2B or B2C even business, have available options to pay either by card or if you want, get them on the direct debit. There are such things like as Go Cardless now. There is Stripe, there is Adyen, there is everything that allows you. I think also there's Blink in the UK. You can just set them up and accept all the payments possible, because also what you don't want to get into is that you just provide people with your bank accounts on an invoice and then you're expecting them to pay, and then it leads to not understanding, have they paid, trying to chase them up, trying to find that payment on the bank account. And I feel like that's a lot when the business is trying to scale. That's where they're getting a little bit, they're trying to put people on the problem rather than addressing the technology problem in the first place.
Or the underlying problem,
Yeah.
underlying issues. Yeah, and I would just add to this point, if I may, that once you have a solid financial system in place, let's say using QuickBooks, a financial department by creating the right emails, etc., you then and then any other software that you put in, let's say a cash flow forecast software, maybe with Kolleno and something to manage your assets, you then have data available in real time, which allows you to see what your business needs. So you might actually notice that you're making a loss. We find that more than what we expected is that once we have the data in place, it's all been set up, we've onboarded the client, the data's all, everything's set up, and we're looking at the information. We actually see, well, the business isn't doing so well. We need to understand why, and usually clients get quite a shock. They thought, whoa, they're turning over, X, and they thought, they're just struggling because they're not organized. Well, actually, you're struggling because actually you're losing money. And you only didn't know because you weren't organized. Now that you're organized, you know that you're losing money, and you can see where you're losing money as well. So these are the basics you need to have in place to then take your business and change or point in a different direction, or overhaul or fire staff or hire more staff, depending on what you find. Without this, you can't do that. It's just all speculation. And we see that in real time.
No, totally agree with you, Martin, on this one. Okay, so we talked about the strategies and how to stay lean and have efficient financial operations. I think maybe just on the closing thoughts, in conclusion, what do you think are the key takeaways or pieces of advice you would offer to businesses looking to leverage technology and automation for efficient financial operations?
So if I can start on this one, I think that what's important is to have a bookkeeping system in place, even if you're very small. It's not expensive. If you look around, you can find very good prices for bookkeeping. Don't leave it to spreadsheets or even worse, nothing at all. That's the first point. The second point is don't try and do it yourself. I've seen numerous times when people have come to us with a small problem like, I've been doing bookkeeping myself for the last 2 years. I just can't reconcile this bank account. Could I just hire your services to just help me reconcile this? And I look at it and I'm like, wow, they have made such a mess. It's unbelievable. And it's completely wrong in every sense. And I have to try and explain it to them. And then it becomes a big cost. And then they're like, it's going to cost them more than had they not done anything themselves. So I would say, in conclusion, you need a bookkeeping system. It's important. I have some very, very small businesses that came to me, and from day one, because they had data, they're able to grow and make the correct decisions. And I've had bigger businesses with big problems because they don't have a good financial system in place. And secondly, don't try and do it yourself. Don't use the experts. They know what they're doing, and it's much more complicated than you think, but it's cheaper than you think to get someone to do it for you. So that's my advice.
Thank you, Martin. And from your side, what would you recommend the key takeaways or pieces of advice?
So 100% the first point. I think that's where businesses, big or small, to be honest, I've seen large organizations still using spreadsheets, which I just don't understand. So I agree with that 100%, is to make sure that, bookkeeping, accounting software is top of mind. I also agree. So I sound like I'm just repeating what Martin said, but I also agree that, when you're looking at the cost of, let's take a step back. I think what businesses need to do is, when they're figuring out and trying to understand, oh, do I really need to have this piece of software? The answer is obviously yes, naturally, as I think we've all alluded to. But then also, break down that cost for yourself, because a lot of people, especially when you're ramping up your business, you see it as an additional expense. But what I always say is, okay, if that is now going to cost you X, imagine if you don't have that and then you get fined, or as Martin's alluded to, you mess up your whole accounting. What is that going to then cost you to get it rectified? You can't actually give me that answer because you can't do your bookkeeping yourself, right? You need to make sure you have a tool that's actually able to do that. So in reality, that could be an unlimited amount until you actually have a technology in place. And the other point that I would also say, which also helps to embed financial, that financial savviness. That's not the word I want to use, but it summarizes it quite well, is to, also define what success is actually going to look like for you. A lot of people, as I said, when they look at accounting software, it is not top of mind for them. So if you're implementing this, like, what is it that you actually want outside of just the accounting? Because when you think about, various different solutions, QuickBooks being number one in that, and what I'm about to say here is that, it's not just the accounting side that we do. When you think about Intuit as a brand, we've got, the accounting side, we've got the marketing side. And actually there's so much with that power of the data that you get from your marketing. Martin alluded to some of it as well, where, where is it that I'm actually losing money? I can now drill down to the actual product that's actually making me lose money, right? So it's like, what does success look like? And defining that, I think is a good way to make sure that not only are you then adopting a piece of technology within the accounting space that's going to help you succeed, but then actually you're actually going to roll that out and use it, and it's going to grow with you as your business grows as well.
Thank you. I think from my side, I probably would add, like, if I look the way our clients work and I've seen them work, I'd probably say the kind of 3 pillars that you need to set out and understand where you work, right? If we look strictly from the financial operations, it's your ERP. So you do need to have an ERP system in place, because without it, you don't know what is happening, what is out, what is not out, what has been paid, what invoices have been raised. And I think that's absolutely required in this day and age. So ERP is a must. So the likes of QuickBooks, that allows you also to integrate with 700 plus systems, right? And then you need to, I think, look at your business and think about, where are you going? Are you small enough to manage everything that you need with the QuickBooks capabilities? Or do you now need to start adding on different systems that can enhance those capabilities in order to support your business growth? And don't think about implementing those systems once you're already gone and you're growing, because at this point you're trying to play a catch up almost, rather than doing it to make sure you can grow efficiently. And I think it's realizing, okay, if you've got your ERP, you're going to be issuing more than 100 invoices per month. How are you going to be collecting those 100 invoices per month? Which payment methods are you going to be using? How many suppliers are you going to be paying? How are you going to be paying those suppliers? Are they going to be some kind of portals on the other side? Do you have people looking at it? How are you going to be doing your close, financial close? How does it all ties in? And I think, to me, sometimes people just think, oh, I've issued an invoice, I've recorded my revenue, everything's hunky-dory, that's it, I'm making money. And no one really until they realize there's a problem in the bank account because they can't make payments, they don't dig into what is going on with their business. And so I think it's what I would recommend to whoever's watching the webinar is that just look at your business and think what you can do better, because the world nowadays just offers an array of opportunities to make your operations so much more efficient. And I think I would probably just leave it there from my side.
Yeah. I can only agree with what you said. I mean, it shocks me how people are so deluded sometimes, to use that word, about their business. They think it's doing so well because of how much they're turning over, and actually in reality they could be making significant losses. And I've had it to the point where people are so shocked that they tell me it can't be. I must be making a mistake. So I say, okay, let's review this. Let's go through this. let's look at this, let's break it down, and then eventually the reality hits. Actually, this is the reality.
Yeah. So yeah, I think to avoid that reality, just try to use the right tools.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right, and you were saying something. I apologize.
I know, I was just going to say, Martin, if anyone gives you any pushback about how their accounting is, just say to them, look, I know someone, that'd be me, who can do the accounting, and I can mess it up even more. So they probably should use your services to make sure their accounting is in place.
But no, gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been such a
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I was just about to say the same thing. Thank you so much, Irina, and thank you so much, Martin, for the insights. It's been really, really valuable, and yeah, great to have you and great to have conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a
And of
pleasure.
course, if everyone would like to reach out to Martin for any follow-ups, please do let us know. Also, with respect to QuickBooks, to Anth, or anything about Kolleno, to myself, we're here to help, and there will be more to come from our side in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the best.